Ho, 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 ho! Hello, everyone, and welcome to Did You Know? The Cold Climate Christmas Special. We're going to spend a little bit of time today talking about cold climates. I know all about cold climates up here where I live, and we're starting to use more technology today than we ever have in the past. All of our little boys and girls have been asking for new technology for decades now. They want the biggest and the best things, and so my elves are busy making all sorts of new gizmos and gadgets, while our engineers and our HVAC contractors are working on new technologies for you, for home, particularly heat pumps that work in very, very cold climates. So I thank you for joining me today. I'm going to bring us a little Christmas story to start our day. 'Twas the night before Christmas, and all through the house the air was so chilly it froze even a mouse. The furnace was silent, no warmth in the air. A frosty disaster was lurking right there. The children were nestled all snug in their bed, while visions of heaters danced in their heads. And Mama in her blanket and my cap huddled together for a long, cold winter's nap. When out on the lawn there arose such a clatter, I sprung from the couch to see what was the matter. Away to the window I flew in a flash, peered through the frost with a hurried dash. When what to my wondering eyes should appear but a van marked HVAC Excellence coming near. With a skilled technician so lively and quick, I knew in a moment this wasn't St. Nick. More rapid than eagles, his tools they came, and he whistled and shouted and called them by name. Now wrenches, now gauges, now thermostats too, on blowers, on burners. I'd know what to do. Into the house he dashed with a grin, determined to make the house warm again. He checked every wire, each vent and each pipe, and he fixed up the furnace all ready to ignite. The heat soon returned. Oh, what a delight. The family was warm through the cold winter night. And as he departed, I heard him exclaim, HVAC Excellence is the name of the game. So here's to the techs who worked through it all. When winter's ice freezes and furnaces stall, they bring us back comfort, a warm, cozy stay. Merry Christmas to all, and to all a warm Day. Oh, thank you all for joining us so much today. And I want to know what you'd like for Christmas. So in the chat and in the comments, let's hear from you what you would like for Christmas. I got two that I would like to share with you, and then I'm going to allow my elves to move us to the next stage of this Christmas story. Okay, our first letter comes from Seymour Frost up in New York. Seymour says, "Hey Santa, all I want for Christmas is my gas furnace. My mom and dad told me that they're taking away our gas furnace and putting in a heat pump. And all my friends say heat pumps don't work up here where it's cold in New York." Well, Seymour, that's what we're here to discuss with you today, that there are heat pumps that work in your area. And we are going to help you understand how good they work so that you may be thinking about new technologies for your home. Well, isn't this an interesting one? This one comes from Hanukkah Harry. Hanukkah Harry says, "Well, hi, Santa. I don't particularly believe in you, but I do know that you're supposed to be a wise man. And I have heard about this new technology called cold climate heat pumps. And my family worked in the coal mines forever, and we want to know about this new technology." Signed, Hanukkah Harry. Well, Harry, coal is not the word we're going to be discussing today. Cold is going to be the word that we will be discussing. A classification of heat pumps, not necessarily new technology, although we have a lot of new technologies going into many of our heat pumps. Cold climate is actually a classification, a way to look at the heat output of different heat pumps and to have a standard for their performance. So we thank you so much for joining us today. I'm going to hand it over to one of my elves to continue this conversation, and we will see you soon. Ho, ho, ho! Thank you all for joining us today.
Well, Merry Christmas, everybody. To celebrate this cold climate heat pump winter, I went down to Las Vegas to hang out with my good friend Crystal at the local 525, which has an amazing training center. I'm all about training. And I can introduce you to Crystal. We can talk for over an hour about all of the incredible things that she's accomplished. And she loves the training, loves all the information. You know, we're here in Las Vegas. Heat pumps is a big part of what's happening here, and they have multiple different types of heat pump trainers. But Crystal, hey, welcome to our show.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, over here in Vegas, we do have gas furnaces, and we also have a lot of heat pumps because half the valley is filled with heat pumps. So, however, Las Vegas is not necessarily a cold climate, but we definitely need to keep up on that technology, and that's what we're up to.
And also, just a short little drive from Las Vegas is Mount Charleston. And Mount Charleston is up here in the mountains. There's a ski resort. People think of Vegas, they don't think about the mountains. It's right here close. And there's also a lot of cold climate stuff up there as well, because it does get pretty chilly up there.
Absolutely.
And we talk about this cold climate, doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be just only for the cold climates. When they start manufacturing this equipment, they're going to be manufacturing the heat pumps with this technology. So it's not like they're going to be manufacturing two different types of heat pump. Over time, it's going to be just simply the cold climate heat pump is just the normal heat pump. So all this technology we're talking about is technology you're going to be seeing sooner or later. And the biggest thing is we have to adapt to it. We were just talking today at lunch about we started to trade. We used to have radios we communicated with. We had to carry quarters in our pocket to make the phone calls. You remember that? And so now we can look up service manuals. We can communicate with customers, communicate with the office directly. Office can track out where we are. It's absolutely amazing how much the technology changes. And also the technology changes in our educational side. Like you see here. Crystal, what kind of technology do you have in your labs here?
Oh, yes. Over here in our labs, we have this multi-head mini split trainer. We also have VRV, and we also have VRF. And so the idea is educating through exposure. We want to make sure that our apprentices and our students are able to see the equipment and be educated on all of its technologies so that when they see it out in the field, they are aware and they are exposed to it and they know how to look up the manuals. They're able to adapt. They're able to troubleshoot it. And what we want to do is we want to make sure that we connect reality with the with the information of the equipment so that they are able to diagnose it efficiently and effectively. So, but what is that? We need to be able to educate their exposure, and that's what I'm all about. Um, what we want to do is we want to make sure that we train our students, and we want to make sure we integrate what we're training them to do, that it's relatable out in the industry and out in the field, so that all that information is not lost out in the wilderness.
And boy, it is a wilderness out there. Man, that was a really fun intro. I'm glad Santa come to hang out with us today, and we're going to continue the merry festiveness today. You know, you brought up a really good point, Crystal, about helping people be aware of what is out there. And that is really what I wanted us to talk about today. So I've spent a bunch of time rebuilding a training course that I did about 4 or 5 years ago, where I compared a whole bunch of different heat pumps, some of the highest capability and lowest temperature heat pumps that were on the market, did a comparison, showed a bunch of them, and it was a really good opportunity for people to see with numbers what the different capabilities are. So today we're going to spend some time diving into a analysis of the performance of different heat pumps from our industry. So this is one of the tools, like Crystal was talking about, like helping people understand where their resources are so that they can look at these different comparisons, because not everyone needs a cold climate heat pump. And what does it even mean? Well, Ty and I just finished a training program called High Performance Heat Pumps, which are different resources to help you understand what is out there and to give you some tools for looking at this data. So today we're going to be focusing on data directly out of two resources. One, which is the NEEP database, which to me is probably the most extensive resource for heat pump performance in our industry. We're also going to be looking at AHRI certifications that validates the performance of some of these numbers that we're going to talk about. All right, so Ty, if we think about a traditional heat pump of 20 years ago, what is the performance of a traditional heat pump? Say we're talking like a 14 or 15 SEER heat pump 15 years ago. Did we get very much heat once we started approaching like 40 degrees and 15 degrees and 0 maybe?
Yeah, you get a lot of heat still at 40 degrees. Once you get down to about 5 degrees or so, that numbers really started dropping off. A lot of times your COP would get down to, 1.5 or so. So there was still heat available. It's still more efficient than just electric heat elements alone. But the thing is, as that temperature dropped, we had to bring on electric heat, auxiliary heat. And using those resistive elements was a lot of cost involved. So we had to think of, how can we harvest that heat more efficiently to where as we get those numbers down lower, we don't need those electric heat elements, or at least not nearly as much.
Exactly. So when we look at that data and we compare how things have changed, one of the things to be very aware of, especially when we're looking at our AHRI tables, is that we are starting to have heat pumps that are actually outperforming the air conditioner version within themselves. And we go, wait a minute, what does that mean? Well, if we think about air conditioning, we typically will design and test our air conditioning around a 95-degree ambient, and then the heat pump BTUs will be around 47 degrees. And so that's all the data we used to have when we were looking up heat pumps, unless we pulled up the owner's manual for each individual one and we opened it up and went to extended heating data tables. So what we're going to look at today is how our industry has changed and ways that it is changing that many are not aware of. And I want to help you understand what that looks like. So we're going to go through a bunch of different models. And I'm probably going to get myself on the naughty list, Ty. I'm probably going to have manufacturers reaching out going, wait a minute, where'd all that come from? And so what I have done to assure this information is I have used both the NEEP database as well as the AHRI certificate for that matchup. And I have both of those information referenced in this material. And this will be downloadable, be available for anybody to use in class so that you can discuss different options in our industry and how well those different heat pumps perform. So when we look across this comparison, we're looking at approximately 3-ton pieces of equipment, right? Units that are rated at approximately 36,000 BTUs at 95 degrees in cooling. And then we're going to look at what their heating capability is. And you're going to see some changing trends in our industry. So when we look at these different pieces of equipment, we're going to look at the AHRI rating, which is at 47 degrees, and now many of them have 17 degrees. But we're going to use the NEAP database and extended heating data tables to look at their extended performance down to very low temperatures, many of which actually will reach down to minus 22 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, I don't know about you, Ty or Crystal, but even here in the Midwest, I don't hit minus 22. So even where I'm at in the Midwest, that cold climate heat pump may not necessarily be the best option. Well, what does cold climate mean? Well, Ty and I were doing a bunch of research when we look at the ratings that are developed by the Department of Energy, particularly through Pacific Northwest National Laboratories and through Energy Star. We have requirements to be able to meet our standards. Hey, Phil, how's it going? Yeah, you're going to, like I said, I'm going to be on the naughty list because some people are going to look at these numbers and go, wait a minute, that don't look right. And other people are going to go, wow, that's a lot of competition. And as you can see, I actually started with Bosch because this is the perfect example for people to understand different performance levels of heat pumps. So let's start here, and you're going to even see like that IDS Ultra, that third one. It's not even been through many of the AHRI ratings, so it's not going to have as much information as we can, but it's going to have quite a bit. And I'm really curious to see as these things start performing more, some of these test numbers through NEAP. All right, so let's look at this. This is a perfect opportunity to look at 3 different types of heat pumps. And actually, all 3 of these heat pumps meet the cold climate heat pump specifications, which means that they have a COP of 1.75 or greater at 5, right? And we're producing significant amount of heat at that 5 degrees. Well, what is that heat? Okay, so one that we're going to look at, and this is an interesting perspective. Hey, Garrett, that's right. Okay, so Ty, I brought this up one time about having a outdoor unit that could be larger in heating than it is in cooling. So let's take a look at this matchup here. Now, remember, we're going to be designing our systems based on airflow capability of our ductwork. So let's assume that I've got 12 to 1400 CFM at less than 0.5 static on my ductwork. Does that sound like a fair design scenario, Ty?
It sure does.
Okay. So if we look at this matchup, we're actually going to see that we can use a 15 SEER heat pump from Bosch that is not a 3-ton unit. It's a 3-ton in cooling, right? Because remember, when we get to inverters, we can control capacity. And now that we have temperature thermistors and pressure transducers, and we can design that system to run within a range, we could actually take a larger unit, derate it, which really means we're just not going to be ramping the compressor up to 100%, and we'll set a maximum capacity on it. This particular one actually is a 60,000 BTU unit that is only 36,000 in cooling. And that way, in the heating mode, we're actually able to get a bunch of heat out of that thing. Isn't that interesting?
That is pretty awesome.
Never really thought about that in the past until I started seeing some of these matchups and started thinking that's what we can do with technology, right? Verifying that we have proper airflow and then using the equipment to run in a certain window. So really what we're doing is we are using this at its CFM rating for cooling. So it's only going to be a 3-ton in cooling. And then in heating mode, once it starts getting down to the point that it needs more heat, it is going to be able to then continue ramping up that inverter. So in cooling, it's probably only going to ramp up over 60%, maybe, right? And then during heating, we're actually going to be able to continue ramping. So at 47 degrees, this 15 SEER unit with the 3-ton air handler can actually produce 38,000 BTUs of heating at 47. At 17 degrees, it can produce 34,200, and then it ramps up even a little bit more down to 5 degrees and can still produce 34,200 BTUs at 5 degrees. That's a lot of heat. Now, what's my physical size of my unit? It's going to be a 5-ton. It's going to be a pretty good footprint. But it shows what we can now do with technology and with algorithms. Now, if we think about that, that is a 15 SEER rated, SEER 2 rated unit, but it's only designed to run down to 5 degrees. The technology of that unit allows it to run down to 5 degrees, and that's about it. And what you'll find, there's a lot of heat pumps in our industry that are designed to run down to that. So what I would call our entry to mid-tier heat pumps, a lot of them shut off at 5 degrees. Now, Ty, in Texas, do you get below 5 degrees?
Not where I'm at.
Okay. So in all actuality, you could design a system, if your heat load is 34,200 BTUs or less, and you can actually design a system that operates down to 5 degrees running heat pump alone with no auxiliary heat. That's kind of intriguing, right?
It is.
And now we're not getting into the higher cost premium pieces of equipment. So, Crystal, what about you? How cold does it get in your area?
Right now, it's like 40 degrees low at best.
Okay.
So it definitely does not get near 5 degrees.
Exactly. So even though this unit is rated for 5 degrees, it meets cold climate specifications, but it's not going to run below 5 degrees. So we can now look at tax credits. We can look at using a Energy Star rated cold climate heat pump certified system that is actually in that entry level equipment. Not really entry level, but I would say in mid, right? It's between entry and mid. Okay, that's a really good start. So now we can qualify equipment that is not in the coldest of climates. But what if it does get a little bit colder? What if I'm in Indiana?
You should
And-
move south.
That's right. Well, someday we'll talk about that. Well, last winter I got down to -5. And so I actually was doing some videos of my heat pump, my cold climate rated heat pump running at -5. Well, if I look at that Bosch 20, that is rated down to -5 degrees. And if we look at the BTU capacity, this truly is a 3-ton. It's approximately 36,000 BTUs in cooling at 95, and it's approximately 36,000 BTUs at heating at 47 degrees. So at 47, we got 35,600 BTUs, right? Now, we are going to be able to operate this thing down to -5, and even at -5, it's still producing 50% of that rated capacity at -5. It's producing 18,200 BTUs, right? So when we talk about the future of heat pumps, it truly is about understanding the capability of the equipment that we're working with. We can't just go in and sell a heat pump and assume that it's going to work. That's the reason heat pumps get a bad reputation, right? So let's think about if I need to really get into cold climate, right? If I'm up north, I'm in Canada, and I need to get into a different range, I might get down into the -20s. That's when I start looking at that capability. And so the only reason that IDS Ultra doesn't have the AHRI certification there is because it has not been tested and it is not completed through the NEEP database yet. So I'll be really curious to see how low that sucker can go. I know I've talked to Bosch in the past, and I don't want to throw numbers out there without verifying it, but I know that this thing can go lower than that rating, but it is rated down to -10 at 27,800 BTUs out of a 3-ton unit. That's pretty significant. I mean, we're talking 2/3 at -10. So, have we changed technology? Yes. Have we increased cost on equipment? I'm sure we absolutely have. We've added a lot along this process. We're probably now into a fully modulating, fully variable speed air handler. We're going to be getting into electronic expansion valves. We're going to be a little bit more sophisticated piece of equipment, but that piece of equipment can go all the way down to -10, producing 27,800 BTUs out of a 3-ton unit. Well, it's technically a 4-ton, but it is designed to run in a 3-ton air handler. So all of these units that you're going to see here are matched up to their accompanying 3-ton air handler, except for a couple of them that are actually 2.5. And that's really going to get interesting. I'll show you some of those here in a little bit. All right, Crystal, Ty, any questions so far? Is it starting to make sense the reason we have to look at units for their extended heating data, especially when we're doing heat load calculations?
Oh, I've always been a fan of extended data. I mean, it is so overlooked because when somebody will say, even just air conditioning alone, well, you have a 3-ton unit. That all 3-ton units are all different when you actually apply them. So that extended performance data is a must. And that's why that manual S was so important in the day, even before the cold climate came along, because you had to be able to see what that system would perform at under the conditions that it's going to be running.
Yeah, very good point. A good question just came in from Murph. What does it do for latent heat capacity? Well, now we're really talking about evaporator temperature, right? When we start looking at latent heat, it's a matter of controlling evaporator. So in cooling mode, I'm really focusing now on adjusting my target evaporator temperature. When I start getting into some of this more advanced pieces of equipment, the algorithms can start fluctuating that evaporator target temperature, and especially if we have functions like dry mode, where it actually will start looking at humidity versus temperature. But there are many pieces of equipment that can actually readjust that target evaporator temperature and focus those BTUs on our latent heat removal. So it really comes down to technology. We've had an evolution of technology, and it's not like we're making one step. And that was the reason I wanted to do this as a cold climate special, is for us to understand that it's not like we're just jumping from heat pumps to cold climate heat pumps. And there's this big difference between the two. What we're really wanting to show is that we have a variety of different capacities from different manufacturers with different applications, with different price ranges depending on the technology. But the capabilities are absolutely phenomenal. So let's move over and let's look at some of the other manufacturers. Let's take a look at like this Carrier Infinity. Many people are familiar with the Carrier Infinity line. This is what is rated at the 24 SEER 2 pieces of equipment. It is rated at 35,400 BTUs at 47 degrees. So it is rated right in that 3-ton range. And it operates down to -5 and will produce 14,160 in that -5 range. So if I start comparing equipment, now I can actually start looking apples to apples from different manufacturers and what they can do at different capacities. And it really starts changing our perspective on what the equipment can actually do. What do you think? Is it all making sense? I haven't seen a lot over in the chat. If anyone's got any questions, hop in there, because I know this is kind of an interesting topic, and it's got a lot to look at, and we're going to keep on going because I've got a bunch of these that we can actually talk about. So when we move from that vertical discharge into a horizontal discharge, we're going to start seeing a variety of different styles of products coming through. Nell, thanks for joining us. We're glad you're here. So if we look at some of the Carrier, even beyond that 24, they've got a performance line that is a fully inverter system. Now, look at that, Ty. Would you classify that as a 3-ton unit?
Oh, that's quite interesting.
Mm-hmm. And so I remember, if we looked at some of our equipment when we started moving into the new SEER ratings, before SEER 2, when we actually went into SEER ratings and we were making that leap from 10 up to 13, I started seeing this in some of our manufacturers that had heating capacities that were not as close to standard as we were looking at before, right? So is 40,000 a 3? Is it a 3.5? Well, it's in between. We're going to be focusing on airflow in that same ballpark, in that same 12 to 1400 CFM range. So this particular unit can actually do around 40,000 BTUs of heat at 47. In the cooling mode, it's back down around 36,000 BTUs. So it's that same kind of scenario when we start looking at capacity. In the past, we often looked at capacity as my 3-ton unit was 3 tons of heat and 3 tons of cool. That's not true going forward. You'll see some really interesting ones here in a minute. So this one's 40,000 BTUs, and it works its way down to minus 15, and is still producing 14,100 BTUs at minus 15. So if I was looking at different pieces of equipment from this manufacturer, it really comes down to how much heat do I need. If I need 14,000 BTUs and it only gets down to minus 5 in my area, this is probably going to work just fine for you. But if it gets down to minus 15 and I still need 14,000 BTUs at minus 15, this one's not going to be able to handle that, but this one actually would. And that's a lot to start pondering when we start thinking about systems that we work with and new generations of systems. Because I just showed you a horizontal discharge that had a higher heating capacity than its vertical discharge cousin. And let's look over at the Coleman products. It's a different scenario. Now we have a side discharge that is 34,800 BTUs at 47. It'll produce 23,484 at 0. But this horizontal discharge can't go below 0. So many people look at heat pumps and go, oh, those new cold climate heat pumps, those horizontal discharge heat pumps, that's the way we go. That's not always the case. It absolutely depends on the manufacturer. So if we look at this particular one, it's maxing out at around 0. But we could go over to the vertical discharge one and take a look at that, Ty.
Yeah.
That's running down to minus 15. And how much capacity is it got at minus 15?
Wow.
Kind
Hard for me to see the numbers on the screen.
16,500 at minus 15.
Wow.
So it's a big change from what we've really thought of in the past as I've got horizontal discharge and I got the new generation of side discharge and my side discharge should be better. And that is not always the case. It absolutely comes down to how it is manufactured. We can continue walking across the line and we can look at one of my favorite products out there. I love that Daikin Fit. It's rated at that 17 SEER 2 rating. That is a 35,000 BTU unit, but it gets down into that 5 degrees and it's not rated to go lower on that one. What is really interesting is the different units that we have. I need to add the life onto that Daikin because now remember, these are air handler matched units, right? So these are not ductless units. These are all matched to air handlers. Even if the outdoor unit looks like a ductless, it's actually matched to an air handler. I think we're going to see a lot of competition in our industry that we've not had in the past. I mean, if you think about it, Ty, if we were 20 years back, if I was picking a heat pump, was there really much difference between manufacturers and their heating capabilities?
It wasn't a whole lot back then.
Yeah, and that's what we're starting to see changing. So we have competition in the market. The Cold Climate Heat Pump Challenge is one of the things that has encouraged manufacturers to start looking at their technology differently, trying to recalculate. Like that Daikin Fit 17 SEER, that's been out for a few years, and it did not meet the cold climate heat pump specifications. Even though it was a really high-performing heat pump, they were actually able to go in and recalculate the algorithms on that Daikin Fit and was able to get that to meet its cold climate heat pump. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a very high SEER 24, 25 SEER 2 rated unit to be able to be cold climate heat pump. It just has to be tuned to be able to do that properly. Now, we've got other manufacturers coming to the industry that have worked with technology that has been outside of the US for a very long time. We talk about this all the time, don't we, Ty? That the United States is really behind in its technology and its heating capabilities. This is one that I found in the matchups, which I had seen the manufacturer before, not paid a lot of attention to what it was running. It's another 3-ton. And at minus 22, it can still produce 20,100 BTUs at minus 22.
Well, I'm just going to take their word for it because I don't want to go test that out at those conditions.
That sounds pretty cold. Remember when we were down at Johnson Controls and they had those great big test chambers? That's where a lot of these kind of tests are done, are in isolated test chambers, so they can actually measure and do the calculations and see the actual capacities of these different units. All right, I'm going to jump over a little bit. There's a variety of different manufacturers. Like I said, this is all right out of the NEAP database and extended heating data tables and AHRI with the certificate numbers for you to be able to go look at those as well. But the one that I wanted you to take a look at is units that we're starting to see that are that high capacity in heating without as much capacity in cooling. And that really comes down to being able to control that modulation, not running up to 100%. We're just locking them at partial capacities. Let's take a look at this Linux. So if we're looking for a lot of heat in a unit, remember, this is a 3-ton unit. This 3-ton unit at 47 degrees can actually produce 55,000 BTUs of heat. It's a lot of heat, right? I only have a 60,000 BTU gas furnace here at the house. That's a 90%. So, 54,000 BTU maximum, right? At full load. So I can actually satisfy significant heat loads with this 3-ton unit that operates down to, I wish I could have, if anyone knows how to lock the first cell on a spreadsheet, either one of you know how to lock the first cell on a spreadsheet, I am not that good with it because I want to see my temperatures here. I got to go all the way back over. All right. So that one runs down to minus 10. So at minus 10, that Linux is actually producing 28,000 BTUs.
Wow. It's impressive.
Yeah. That's a lot of heat out of a unit that is really designed to be a 3-ton unit in cooling, but has a much higher heating capacity than it does in cooling. And so we're starting to see that trend in a variety of different manufacturers. As you look across there, you'll see some that are well over 3-ton for heating capacity and some that run right along that nominal. Renee says, go to the data and freeze panes. All right, so let me go. Thank you.
Now, if you freeze that pane, do you have to go into defrost?
Oh, yes, I do. All right, let's see if I can do this. Woo! Excuse me, that bronchitis still hasn't gotten out of here. All right, so I can go in here and freeze pane. Oh boy, there's the data that I want. Let me see if I can right click this thing. All right, I'm sure Renee's probably going to tell me more here in just a minute. Did I see a hand up there? All right, how we do it, Crystal?
Hey, no, I'm good. I was just saying data's up top.
All right,
So who's that pane?
going to, I got to go over here to this screen. All right, so go up into data. And does that lock it? Oh.
Oh,
No.
Renee says go to view, up top, view, freeze pane.
All right. Sorry, everyone. Hold on just for a minute.
It's
freeze panes.
There it is.
Freeze first column. Oh. All right. Hopefully.
Thank you, Renee.
Yay. Thank you so much. Woo. All right. So let's move on down the line and let's look at a variety of different applications here. And let's look at some of these capacities. Now, we just had Midea on the show, and we were looking at different pieces of equipment that they have coming out. And one of them that I wanted to point out is this generation here, because we start seeing those same things. We have that capability of limiting the unit based on airflow so that it's only running in its maximum cooling capacity, right? So we're going to be able to lock this thing into our CFM that our ductwork is capable of running. So we can get that 3-ton cooling capacity out of it. But then we're going to run, this one runs down to minus 15 and still produces 21,270 BTUs at minus 15.
Wow.
Right? We've not really talked about those kind of numbers in the past. And this is the importance of looking at these this way. Because remember, all of these units are actually cold climate certified. There's a variety of different manufacturers that have been releasing new products, some of which we might be familiar with, some of which are completely new. Now, another one that I wanted to point out, which is really cool, let's take a look at this Train P Series and NV Series. These are actually 2.5 ton, 30,000 BTU cooling capacity units. And so it's that same perspective, right? Ty, let's just say that I've got 1,200 CFM. Let's just say I got 1,000 CFM to 1,100 CFM that I can work with on my ductwork. I don't have enough ductwork for a 3-ton unit, but in cooling, I could run 2.5. And as long as I have a variable speed blower, I can control my airflow so that it stays within that realm. And I can actually produce up to 34,000 BTUs of heat out of that 2.5 ton air conditioner at 47 degrees Fahrenheit. And with that NV series, that one, the NV 2.5 ton, runs down to minus 10 degrees and still produces 25,600 BTUs. And if I need to go even colder, down to minus 15, I just simply would move from the NV series to the P series. And now I can produce that heat down to minus 15. So simply going from one product series to another product series within the same manufacturer, I can achieve the heat load that I need. So they're both producing very similar at 47 degrees. They're producing the same at 17. And so simply going from one model to the other, both in that 2.5 ton capacity, I have one unit that can get us down to minus 10 and one that can get us down to minus 15.
In that case, your electric heat would only be for emergency use.
Yeah, if ever. And so we have some jurisdictions that are not allowing certifications if they have electric resistive heat hooked up. They want simply air handlers and heat pumps. And so if that is your local jurisdiction, well, you just simply have to match the correct system and look at the BTUs for different manufacturers. So I know it can be a challenge if I'm a contractor and I have primarily only used one brand in the past. I could potentially be limited on my heating capabilities, and I have to look at the new technologies, maybe other manufacturers as a second line, but I at least need to look at my own equipment series, my own manufacturer, and look at the different generations to see what the capabilities are within those. So yeah, a lot changing in here. All right, and I'll end on those two Yorks. So let's take a look at these two Yorks. If we look at that same comparison that I had earlier, where we typically think of a horizontal discharge as being our higher efficiency, newer generations of equipment should be the higher performer in this York lineup. So in this particular one, in this HMH7 series, it's a 34,000 BTUs at 47 degrees. It maxes out at 0. But it still produces 23,484 degrees at 0. Now, if I need to go below 0 in that York line, if I simply relooked at this LX series, it was fairly similar at 47 degrees, but now it has about the same at 0, but can continue going lower. That goes all the way down to our minus 15. I think it was 15. Yeah, minus 15 degrees, and produces 16,500 BTUs at minus 15.
They should call that the New York model.
Exactly. Yeah, and that is a newer model for them, and they've done a really good job at looking at these extended heating datas. And so if you like your traditional cube unit, there you go. You have a New York unit that can satisfy those demands. All right. Okay, any questions out there? We're actually getting close. We're already 43 minutes into this. And I know it's not a lot of different content. I mean, it took almost a day to build this one out, making sure that all of these numbers are directly out of the AHRI ratings and the NEEP extended heating data tables and the manufacturer's data tables so that we can have equivalent comparisons of 3-ton units. But all of these units are actually rated at 3-ton, except for those few that are rated at 2.5 in cooling, but 3 tons in heating.
So if somebody wanted to have a copy of this, could they you can access for them?
Yeah, I downloaded this into a PDF, and let me see if I bet I can share drive this. Let me try that real quick and see.
It's just a great example for teaching. I mean, anything you're using to actually apply or design would have to be from each manufacturer, but just for teaching wise, so many different models out there. It's pretty great resource.
Exactly. I think what I'll do is I will allow anyone to access this, but you'll only be able to access it in view mode so that the data cannot be changed. So let me apply that real quick. And I've grabbed a link. And so over here in the chat, I'm going to paste this link. And maybe someone try to download that and see if that's accessible. So that is through my SharePoint, and it is open access but non-editable. And so it is. It's a good comparison to use in class to go, hey, not all heat pumps are created equal. They are all over the place. And we really have to look at our data closely to make sure that we're looking at the proper units. Yeah, that's a lot of stuff. All right, Crystal, tell me more about your training facility and what you guys have got going on there.
Oh yeah. So I'm over in an apprenticeship and over in Vegas, and we've got a 30,000 square foot facility over here. It's pretty amazing. We have things like an HVAC program. We got our basic mechanical, basic refrigeration, commercial refrigeration. We've got instrumentation, which is interesting, where we also do tube bending and process controls. We got VRF equipment, as I mentioned earlier. We've got VFDs and pumps, and so where they are able to take apart pumps and service and maintenance those puppies. Yeah, it's fantastic, and we're ramping up our VRF game and VRV game. So I recently received a grant, was awarded a grant, and we're pending getting that equipment in and installed in our training facility also, so that we can also teach to the new technologies that are out there. And VRF isn't even that new, but it's already here, and we need to continuously train,
We need
right?
to embrace that.
Yeah.
The lab here is absolutely amazing. Every time I come, it's something new in here, every single time. And they got full-on chiller systems, they got refrigeration equipment. It is absolutely incredible.
Fantastic. Now, Crystal, you really grabbed the industry and been very successful within our industry. Ty and I have so many conversations about how amazing HVAC and refrigeration is and how you can really accomplish dreams and even more than what you anticipated when you first got into this career. Can you tell us a little bit about your venture within our industry?
Oh man, my adventure started way long ago. So I went to VOTEC. I went to a vocational technical high school, and I learned HVAC in there. I learned, and I got an internship, a paid internship. I was able to work my way through, and I loved it because you're never bored.
Yeah.
This industry is never boring, and there's always something new. It's mentally stimulating, and it's a dream. You're always, and the beautiful thing about service and maintenance is that you're not in one particular facility per se. You're able to move around and maneuver over and seeing different people and have different conversations. So it's fantastic. And then I went to education. I got my degree. We did our thing, and I just love this industry. It's never boring. And as we know, continuous education is plentiful. Like, we just need to always keep up. Otherwise, we're going to be behind.
Yeah. That's exactly why we do this. Is we always talk about our training facilities. I'm so grateful that Ty came over to visit you, and we can tell everyone about what's going on, the things that we have, because training facilities like yours are changing the way people look at our industry. If we looked at the HVAC industry 5 years, 10 years, 20 years ago, it wasn't looked at as a high-tech profession. And I mean, we can look behind you right now. I mean, we've got, a refrigeration trainer, an automated refrigeration trainer. That is a ductless system that we can actually, in the classroom, watch refrigerant flows. And I mean, if someone not even in the industry walks into that classroom, they go, wait, what's going on here? And we go, this is our industry. This is what you didn't see in the past, and hopefully you will now. So we encourage everyone to look at the program, see what's going on at your local vocational program, see what the UA is doing, because we've got some phenomenal programs at our UA. Phil Rains from Bosch still hanging in with us. Phil says in the future we need to cover vapor injection. You are absolutely right, sir. And that is the case in many of these pieces of equipment. When we start getting into that very low temperature range, we're going to be starting to introduce vapor injection systems, and understanding how those work. And as service technicians, how we're going to work on these systems is crucial. Ty and I were just having a discussion about vapor injection, and especially the way that it used to work, like in scroll compressors, and how we can help cool that compressor, and we can also challenge that compression ratio a little bit with our refrigerant. And so these are the things, as educators, it's crucial for us to spend time learning about these new technologies and what they're doing. Because it's one thing to say, we got vapor injection. Cool. What does it do? And what's the benefit of it? Well, you want to run down to minus 22 degrees Fahrenheit? That's a major benefit. Yes, Crystal is an absolute amazing instructor.
Thank you.
Well, and we love hanging out at the National HVACR Education Conference. That's where I got to hang out with Crystal. We've seen her at a variety of different trade shows. We will be there in March, spending some time with all of these technologies. Phil from Bosch, I'm sure he's going to be there with us. We're going to do classes on inverters. We're going to be doing classes on different technologies. We're going to be classes on diagnosing these different types of inverters and controls. And we're going to be teaching you how to introduce them into your classroom, exactly like you see behind Crystal and Ty there. You know, we have a iConnect interactive inverter trainer to get comfortable with these technologies. So there's a lot of resources in the industry. You know, we have different trainers on every week. We didn't bring on a separate trainer this week, but now we do. So thank you, Crystal, for coming in here with us. I wasn't sure if I was going to be doing this one solo or not. We weren't even going to do a show today, and I thought, I'm going to be working, and it's Christmas, and let's just have some fun and see who actually shows. So we appreciate everyone joining us today. We know that you're taking time from your day to just hang out with us, but it's very important topics that we all need to be focusing on, learning, and continuing our education, exactly like Crystal said. Crystal, I've got a question for you. As a training facility, we know that you have instructional programs for your students. Do you offer any classes for technicians or contractors that are out of the programs, for like any night classes or any special opportunities to come into the classrooms and see any of the technologies?
So here at the local 525, it's member based.
Yes.
So absolutely do hold professional development classes to hone their skills, but it's for the members of the UA. So sure. Yes, they are always going to be honing in on their craft. And in fact, I'm having Manitowoc come over in January to do a service manufacturer training for them. So it's fantastic.
Yeah.
Always got to keep up on it.
Yeah, because even in those Manitowoc ice machines, a lot of our smaller capacity under 500-pound units are now moving over to R290, A3, highly flammable gas. You know, there's different procedures and processes, and you need to understand those lower operating pressures and the differences in the refrigerants. So there's a lot going on. And even at the UA facilities, I know there are UAs that don't have their own high-tech training facilities. So it's really cool to see that you continue to invest in this new technology, and that our technicians are getting that advanced education. Awesome.
Absolutely. We're just building each other up, making the world a better place, hopefully.
It truly is. All right, Ty, well, what's next on the agenda for the day? You guys got any projects that you're looking at, or any new equipment that you're checking out?
Oh gosh, I love just nerding out here with this facility, because like I say, every time I come here, there's always something new and different. Like this is the latest one that's new, and you can't see everything in the video, but down below, the compressor's separated. There's already permanent gauges mounted to it. You can follow all the piping out. You can see the electronic expansion valves, but also the big stuff, the chillers, where they have it cut open. You can see the different types of plates, and they got a wall set up with all the different failures, and you can see failed parts and then what caused it. And they have an actual York training display set up. It has the whole display from a York system. You can go in and troubleshoot, and they have motors and small ones and massive big ones. it's like it's a playground in here. So yeah, we'll spend some time running through, look at all this really cool stuff. But so thankful that Crystal, she invests so much in the industry and so much in the program, and she's constantly fighting and improving and making things better everywhere she goes. Always learning herself, learning new stuff, and trying to always make the program better. So if you don't know Crystal already, she's definitely somebody to talk to. And if you're with the union and have questions on how to build programs, I'm sure she would probably help you out with that.
I've built a couple in my past. I absolutely have. Happy to help everybody.
Fantastic. So if you're at the conference and you see Crystal running around, you go, hey, I've seen you on the show and I got some questions, and I'm sure Crystal will be very willing to help you as well as everyone at the conference. So we thank you all for joining us. We hope you had a wonderful holiday for those that don't celebrate Christmas, and a Merry Christmas for those that do. And we will see you next week as we dive a little bit deeper into our inverter technologies. Everyone have a great day. Thanks for joining.